Hi, I'm Kelly Quiney, and welcome to Stepping Off the Path. This podcast is about the moments when life stops fitting, when something becomes intolerable and you realize change isn't optional. In today's episode, the roles are reversed and I'm the one being interviewed. This conversation is with my good friend and fellow coach, Nicky Gibbs. She held the space and asked the questions for this episode. I wanted you to hear my story, not because it's extraordinary, but because for a long time it looked completely ordinary from the outside, whilst I was quietly falling apart on the inside. This episode is for anyone who's ever thought, I can't keep doing it like this, but I don't know what comes next. If that's you, you're in the right place. Let's begin.
Welcome to Stepping Off the Path. Today, I'm interviewing your host, Kelly Quiney, because if you're listening to these conversations, you deserve to know who's behind the mic and why this podcast exists.
Thanks, Nikki, and thank you everyone for listening. This episode is for anyone who's ever looked at their life and thought, I don't know how I got here, and I really don't know how to get out of it. And just to say that when we recorded this podcast episode, we were already a few episodes in. So if you are new here, you can start anywhere, but this one is about me, just so you know who's behind the mic.
So, Kelly, tell us, who are you and why this podcast now?
Well, as you said, Nikki, and others will have heard me say, I'm Kelly Quiney. I'm a woman-centered coach, and I really predominantly work with women, usually midlife and beyond. And they've hit a point where something isn't working anymore, but they can't quite name yet what needs to change. And this podcast exists because I've been in a place that felt completely impossible. Like my life looked fine from the outside, but inside I was scared, exhausted, and honestly, I was losing myself. And when I was at my lowest, the thing that helped me was hearing other women speak about their own stories, speaking honestly about how they got out of their own impossible life events. And it gave me a glimmer of something that I couldn't access on my own, which was hope. So this podcast is my way of passing that on. And that is really born out of me being in a genuinely hopeless place and finding hope through other women's voices.
So when you picture the woman listening, who is she?
Yeah, the woman that comes to mind or that I made this for was really myself. She's capable. She's carried a lot. She's done what needed to be done. And she might be outwardly successful, or she might just be the one that everyone leans on. But there's something inside of her which is saying, I can't keep living like this. I can't keep doing it like this. And she doesn't need a lecture or to be told off or told how to do it this way or that way. She just needs to know that she's not alone and that there is another way.
So tell me, what was life like before you got to that place of fear and exhaustion? Tell me a little bit about what life looked like. What did it feel like on the inside?
Yeah. I'd say, like, on paper, it looked brilliant. I'd been in a male-dominated career for almost 20 years, well paid, well respected. I was doing work that sounded impressive. And I always say, looking back, I loved the response I got from people when I told them what I did more than the actual job. So I'd get an ooh when I told them that I was an engineering geologist. And even though that felt amazing, inside it felt like I was disappearing. And the Sunday night dread was awful. Waking up thinking, how am I going to get throughout the day? And there's one detail that always stands out in my mind because it was so repetitive. I would go into the bathroom every day and work and I would cry. And I can still tell you what those tiles look like. And then I would come out of the bathroom, splash cold water on my face, fix myself up, walk out and act like everything was fine. But the gap between what was true and what I was actually showing is where the most damage was happening.
Wow. So I'm wondering what it was that kept you there.
Oh, fear. So much fear. It was, what will people think of me if I walk away from this well-paid job, the good job in inverted commas, a fear of losing respect, fear of looking like I was ungrateful or a bit flaky about everything. And the big one is I genuinely didn't believe that there was a realistic alternative. So I had that story that I've left it too late. I should have it figured out by now. And I really felt like the boat had passed me by. So I stayed and I kept telling myself, if I can just get through today, it'll be all right. If I can just get through tomorrow, it'll be okay. But I actually wasn't okay. It wasn't all right. And my body was warning me for a long time and I didn't listen. And honestly, there'd been a whole runway of red flags that I had ignored for years. And when I wouldn't stop, my body stopped me.
So just listening to you there, you said the word should a few times, and I'm curious, what were the main shoulds that you were living under at the time?
Well, I think one of the biggest ones is that I should be happy. I've got this good job, everything looks great on paper. Um, Other people would love this life, love this job. So I should be grateful. I should be able to cope. I should have it all figured out. And honestly, because it was a male dominated environment, there was another layer. And I wanted to prove myself. I wanted to be the woman who could do the hard thing and not need anything. And that's a really powerful identity, but is also a trap.
Um, Perhaps you can tell me a little more about that trap and take me to the moment where everything changed. What happened?
Yes, it's a very effective trap because I was no longer able to work in the same way that I did before I had children. I was still present, I was still there, but I had reduced to part-time hours. I wasn't able to stay away overnight or work some longer days, which is how the job had been prior. But I still wanted to be able to do those things. And I was trying to spread myself too thin. I wanted to still be able to maintain the role that I had prior, and it just wasn't possible. And I think something that really matters here is that when I went back to work after my second child, I just couldn't find my place anymore. And this was a company that I had worked in for over 10 years prior. I knew the systems, I knew the people, and suddenly I felt like I didn't quite belong. I hadn't changed as a person, but the way I could work had changed. And there really wasn't a place for that version of me. And then I was really beating myself up about that. Very, very effective way of holding yourself in a place that's really not helpful for you. And in terms of my body saying no, I clearly remember one day I had gone into work and I started to get palpitations. And it wasn't I'm feeling a bit anxious kind of heart racing moment. I guess to really put it in blunt terms, my resting heart rate is usually around about 60 and it was up to around 110. And that was spiking to 140 when I walked up one set of steps. And I went to the doctor and they basically said to me, "Oh, yeah, your heart rate is a bit high. We're not sure why. Here's some beta blockers. Off you go." And essentially from that day, I didn't go back to work for over 6 months. And it wasn't just palpitations, it was dizziness, exhaustion. I felt like I was going to fall over. And it was incredibly scary because no one could give me a clear answer. So the blood tests were mostly normal, apart from high inflammation markers. So I was left with real uncertainty and fear. It was really scary to have so many physical things happening to your body with no real answers in sight.
It does sound terrifying, living with that level of uncertainty and fear. And I'm curious about what that did to you mentally and emotionally. You've already mentioned fear,
Mm.
um,
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. No,
and
absolutely.
fear a few times actually.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe tell me a bit more.
Yeah. So absolutely. It was terrifying because when your body stops cooperating and nobody can explain it, your mind starts to fill in the gaps. And my mind was really putting some quite scary possibilities in place for me. And I was really frightened about the future. And I was frightened about my kids. Like they were, I think, 3 and 6 at the time. Um, I was worried that this was going to be a permanent change. And I think the other thing is that it forced a reckoning with myself. I couldn't hide from myself anymore, and I was forced to slow down. I couldn't outrun it. And essentially, I was sofa bound.
And when you were on the sofa, what did you have to admit to yourself that you'd been avoiding?
I think, honestly, is that I wasn't okay. And not in a dramatic way. It was just a very plain, honest, quiet way. I wasn't okay. And also that I didn't know how to ask for help because for so long I'd been the capable one and I didn't want to feel like I was putting on other people. And I didn't have the language to even know or to give voice to asking for and needing support. Like I had to get sick before I let other people in. And one really important thing that I learned later on is this: refusing help doesn't make you strong, and it can actually push people away. And asking for help is one of the ways that you build trust. And I had never learned that before because most people do want to help you. You will have good friends and good people in your life who are queuing up to help you. But if you don't know how to ask for it, how do you get that help?
That sounds like quite a strong pattern of being the one to cope with everything, who kept things calm, who didn't want to worry anyone. Where do you think that pattern started for you?
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's a very old pattern for me. I was very much the caretaker when I was growing up. I kept things steady. I was very good at watching the room and managing my emotions so other people didn't have to. And that has really carried into adulthood, even with people who love me, even with my husband, who is the most supportive person in my life. Um, I still had this instinct to hold back because I just didn't want to put on people. And it wasn't rational, but it was deeply wired. Don't need too much. Don't make it hard for others. Keep it together. And just really had this such a strong sense of I don't want to put on others or make things, hard for them.
Yeah. So when you were forced to stop, what actually helped you start coming back?
Yeah, there were a few things, but I think one of the biggest shifts was learning that I wasn't just tired. My nervous system was absolutely fried. And I did things like a lot of breath work. I spent time meditating. I listened to audiobooks and podcasts because it was literally all I could manage at first. But the biggest change came when I started to understand what was underneath the burnout. And I did eventually realize that it was burnout. And the old beliefs and patterns that I'd never named. And for me, one of the biggest ones was the underlying belief that I'm not good enough. And there was another one, like it's not safe to be seen. And the story in my head around that was absolutely brutal. It was like, they're going to find out. I'm going to be find out any minute that I'm completely incapable. And that constant fear kept me immobilized and I was completely frozen. And once I could see those clearly, not as a personal flaw, but as very much learned survival strategies, things started to make sense. And, it's only when something makes sense that you can actually start to work with it.
That's amazing, isn't it? So you kept quiet for years, not asking for help, and having this pattern that became more entrenched over time. And I know that you've worked with women and you've held spaces for women and with women for years now. And I'm curious about what you've learned about shame in those spaces.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say the biggest thing that I'm a firm believer of is that shame grows in silence. And something changes when women are able to say the unspeakable out loud, even gently, even imperfectly. I know when I trained as a parent coach and in those groups, women spoke thoughts that they'd never dared say, not because they were bad mums, but because they were human. And the relief was immediate because there was invariably another woman in that group, if not everyone, who got it and identified with it. And the relief of, oh, it's not just me. Like that experience was one of the reasons I moved into broader coaching work because I could really feel what happens when women are in connection together and, stop performing, or maybe not even performing is the right word, but doing what they think they should do to please other people, and they just get honest and they start telling the truth. It's truly magical.
I'd like to link that to your own story, Kelly, because for a long time you didn't stop and tell the truth. You just kept on going. And there's a word for how you were coping that I think a lot of women will recognize. You weren't lazy. You weren't unmotivated. You were stuck. And you've described it since as freeze.
Yeah,
And I'm wondering if freeze was a kind of default setting for you.
absolutely. You've nailed it. Yeah, yeah, completely. I was immobilized.
And so what do you mean by that? And what shifted for you?
Yeah, so I think I had this idea that any action meant it was huge and life altering. And because I was so unhappy, I was in an all or nothing frame of mind. And because I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do and I couldn't see the plan and exactly where I was going, I didn't do anything. And I stayed immobilized because why would I wreck this amazing job and career and the finances and the stability and all of those things if I didn't know where I was going? So it was because I was so fearful of doing the wrong thing or going in the wrong direction, I didn't do anything. I was immobilized. And what really what really changed for me was learning to take the smallest step in the direction of who I was becoming. And honestly, part of that was doing parent coaching and things like that. But the simplest thing was simply saying it out loud. I don't want to do this anymore. And then I'm retraining as a coach. And that was massive for me. And not because it was this huge external move and big fanfare, but it broke the silence and it made it real.
And how did it feel to tell someone you were retraining, especially after having a job that got you that ooh response?
You know what? I was, I think there was some nerves, but it was so freeing. And what I really find surprising is that I don't even remember the other person's reaction, because the real moment was me hearing myself say it. And so for the first time, I was doing something for me, not for approval. And that was new.
I love that. There's so much power in that statement. What matters most to you now?
Honestly, it's hope, and not the fluffy kind. It's the kind that says this might feel impossible, but it's not. There is possibility. And if one woman listening is in her own version of the sofa season, whether it's health, grief, relationship, burnout, addiction in the family, anything that feels impossible, if she can get a glimmer of possibility, then what I'm doing, this work, truly matters.
Amazing. And what do you refuse to do anymore?
I refuse to pretend. I refuse to wear the mask of I'm fine when I'm not. I refuse to stay quiet just to keep things comfortable. And I'm sure some people would rather I didn't. Um, and refusing to stay quiet, like not in a harsh way, but in a truthful way. And there's a real difference in that.
There is a big difference, isn't there?
Mm.
And what do you still honor about that old version of you?
Yeah, I have a lot of love for her and a lot of self compassion, but that she did hard things. She kept going. She was determined. She built a life. And also that she did the best she could with the beliefs that she had at the time. And I don't want to shame that version of me. I want to learn from her. And I think for the longest time, I felt a lot of shame around the way I was. And there was no room for growth in that. So I
Uh,
take all of the wonderful lessons and I'm learning from that.
That just gave me goosebumps. That was beautiful. So if someone's listening right now and thinking something has to change, but I'm really scared and I don't know what to do, what do you want to say to her?
I want to say this because it matters so much and I believe it's really important. Even when something is hurting you, even when you know something isn't good for you, letting go of that can still feel really painful because it's yours. It's familiar. It's an identity. And I want to normalize that. I did that for years. I know so many women and men who have done the same. And there is a fear around letting go of the familiar, even when it's something that is harming us. And I think it's really easy to fall into self attack and blame around the shoulds around not taking action. So if you are struggling to release it, please know it's common. You're not alone. And it really doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're human. That's normal. I get it. That's real. And it's scary when you're thinking about change and doing something new. But to actually admit that her life doesn't fit anymore, it's okay to admit that. Even if you only say it out loud to yourself, You don't have to blow your life up to begin with. One small step counts. One honest conversation counts. One message to someone safe counts. Find your people. Find the ones who can hold your truth without panicking or minimizing it. And sometimes the people closest to you love you deeply, but they can't be your cheerleaders for change. And that's okay. You still need support. And finally, listen to your body, because it will tell you the truth long before your mind does. It tells you when something isn't right, and it also tells you when something is right. You're not behind, you're not broken, you've not left it too late, and you are most definitely allowed to change.
Amazing. I love all of those. Kelly, thank you. And thank you so much for sharing your story.
And thank you so much for holding it with me, Nicky. And thank you everyone for listening. I'm really glad you're here. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Stepping Off the Path. If something in this conversation resonated, sit with it for a moment. You don't need to have the answers or a plan. Sometimes noticing what's true is enough to begin. You'll find links to the podcast and other episodes in the show notes. Please take a moment to subscribe and follow or leave a comment, and share this with any woman you think may benefit from it. Until next time, trust what you feel. It matters.